Welcome back. As we've discussed, data extraction is the crucial first step in many areas of research and analysis. And in this section, we will consider one avenue of data extraction, namely APIs. First off, we're going to start with a bit of theory on what an API is, the different types of HTTP requests, and the format of the response, JSON. I know you've already discussed it, but a quick recap won't hurt anybody. After the theoretical section, we'll dive into the implementation of these concepts in the real world. We'll practice on some simple public APIs and introduce the concept of pagination. Ready?
Let's start off with the question, what is an API? API stands for Application Programming Interface. This abbreviation may sound somewhat unclear, but the concept is pretty simple. Basically, an API specifies how software components should interact. You may think of it as a contract between a client and a server. If the client makes a request in a specific format, the server will always respond in a documented format or initiate a defined action. The APIs we will be dealing with in this section are web-based APIs. However, the concept of API exists in many other forms. For example, there can be APIs between an application and an operating system, or between some pieces of hardware and software. Some examples of web APIs include up-to-date currency exchange rates, job boards, weather forecast information, and many, many more. At this point, you may be wondering, why is that useful? Well, APIs are extensively used to incorporate some third-party functionality into your service. For example, you may have seen Facebook's Share This buttons on some unrelated websites. This is embedded using the Facebook API. Another application of web APIs is giving the public access to some obscure or constantly changing real-time data. Examples of this are APIs that return up-to-date currency exchange rates, or a social media API that obtains all posts containing a certain hashtag. Finally, sometimes we may possess the data we want but lack the capabilities to process it. It may require some sort of machine learning algorithm, for instance. Well, there are a lot of APIs out there to help us with that as well. Okay, we've established that there are a lot of useful APIs out there. Now, APIs could be either free or paid. You can imagine that it's no easy job to create and maintain an API, so one would expect most of them to be paid. Well, contrary to popular belief, the internet is full of generous people creating and maintaining public APIs for free. But keep in mind that most of the APIs are still paid. Okay, now that we know what an API is and why it is useful, it's natural to ask, how do we use one? Luckily, all APIs should have some form of documentation, a file or a web page explaining exactly how to use it, its response format, and so on. That said, a shared step across their usage is to connect to it by making an HTTP request to the API server. To learn more about HTTP requests, join us in the next lecture. Thanks for watching, and see you there.